So we're just talking a little bit about grouping of rests here in our Conservatory Canada Theory 1, pages 56 to 60 in the workbook. Grouping of rests. There are specific rules for writing rests, and when we are writing these particular rules, the reason why we try to do it this way is it makes sense wherever we are in the world that we are able to read the music together exactly the same way. So that's kind of the reason for it. So I'm going to read through what it says on page 56. Grouping of rests. Rests are used just like notes of the same value, with a few exceptions. 1. As with notes, when adding rests over several beats, remember to complete one beat at a time. When you are finished, the complete bar must add up to the number of beats indicated by the time signature. Number 2. Each beat must be completed before the next one is begun. Number 3. If you need to use more than one rest to complete a bar, use the smallest one first, place it next to the note. Then complete each part of the beat using the next largest rest until the beat is filled. This works both going left to right and right to left. So let's look at the example on page 56 that's in 3/4 time. In 3/4 time, they've given you 2 quarter notes and a 16th note. So that says to me that I've got 2 beats already taken care of with my 2 quarter notes, and I've got a quarter of a beat with my 16th note. I still need 3/4 of a beat for it to add up to 3 quarter notes. So in my second bar, I've got a quarter note and a quarter note, a 16th note, and a 16th rest, the double hook. That makes it add to 3.5 beats. So I've got 1, 2, and a quarter. Now I've got 1, 2.5 with my 16th and my 16th rest. In the final bar, I have a quarter note, which is 1, my quarter note, which is 2. I have my 16th note, which they've given to me, which I've joined with a 16th rest to make it add up to a half a beat. And now I have an 8th rest. That fills in my 3rd beat. So as I'm looking here, I'm just going to show it here. We have our quarter. You can kind of see that idea right there. And so in order to get the full 3 beats, I must complete the bars like that. Now, I can also do the same thing on the second line, but work it backwards. So say I'm given the 2 quarter notes at the end of the bar and a 16th note. I would say that that last quarter note was beat 3. The second last quarter note is beat 2, and then I've got a quarter of a beat. So I've got 2.25 beats right there, and I'm working my way backwards through there as well. Now I go, my quarter note at the end is beat 3, so you're noticing I'm working backwards. My quarter note before that is beat 2. The 16th note and the 16th rest add up to a half a beat, so now I have 2.5 out of 3 beats. I still need another rest. I need an 8th rest to make it add to the full 3 beats. So now my final bar has the quarter note on beat 3, the quarter note on beat 2, a 16th note, then a 16th rest, followed by an 8th rest. And you'll notice I'm building smallest to largest. If I reverse those rests, and if I put the 8th rest first, followed by the 16th rest, that would be incorrect. So I must build smallest rest to largest rest. Okay, that takes a bit of getting used to, and I'll show you some examples in a moment to work with, but it's actually really easy to do once you get used to it. Number 4, in quadruple time, i.e. 4 beats per bar, join beats 1 and 2 or beats 3 and 4 into one long rest, completing 1/2 of the bar. So let's look. It says this is the only time you need to use a rest of greater value than 1 beat, although I will show you one other place in a moment. So if we take a look at exercise A on 4A, we have 4/4 time for our time signature. We've got a quarter note, that's beat 1. We have a quarter rest for beat 2. For beats 3 and 4, I would not put in 2 quarter rests. Instead, I would use a half rest. So I would want to make sure to make it look as easy to read as possible. So my example A says incorrect, and the second bar says correct there. So beats 1 and 2 can be combined into one rest. Beats 3 and 4 can be combined into one rest. Let's look at example B. The time signature is 4/8 time, a slightly less common time signature. Remember though that 4/8 time is the same as 2/4, and that's how I often will think of it. But anyways, we're going to read it as 4/8. I'm given an eighth note, so that's beat 1. I've got an eighth rest for beat 2. If I choose to put in 2 more eighth rests for beat 3 and 4, I'm not going to get my mark for it. I want to put in an eighth note that they've given to me on beat 1, the eighth rest that they've given to me on beat 2. A quarter rest combines together to make beats 3 and 4 because it takes 2 eighth rests to equal a quarter rest right there. So you'll see the incorrect response and the correct. There's one more humongous rest rule, and it's the bottom of the page. I'm thankful at least that they used capital letters for this. Important note. And the rule is, and this rule is a hard and fast rule, if beats 2 and 3 need rests, then 2 separate rests must be used. And how I remember it is beats 2 and 3 must never be combined into rests. So if we're in 4/4 time, and I've got beat 1 as a quarter note, and I've got beat 4 as a quarter note, and I'm stuck with beats 2 and 3, and I pop in a half rest there, and I'm going to get no mark for that, because that's beats 2 and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to put in 2 separate quarter rests. You will notice, in order for me to know that it is beats 2 and 3, I always write the counts in. And you should always write the counts in to make it easier for you to do. All right, we're over to page 57. On page 57, in triple time, i.e. 3 beats per bar, for theory 1, now they are going to mention something and I'm going to show you another rule in a second. Always use separate rests for each beat. So you'll notice they have an example that says acceptable later. I'm going to just tell you right off the bat, acceptable now. So let's instead change that word later to now. So we are going to put that at the top of page 57. Instead of acceptable later, we're going to write the words acceptable now. And so my learning of writing rests has always been that beats 1 and 2 are allowed to be combined into one rest. So in 3/4 time, it's totally acceptable to put a half rest for beats 1 and 2. And then they've got a quarter note for beat 3. There is a bonus though. If you wrote 2 separate quarter rests for beat 1 and 2, you get your mark as well. So there are actually 2 options available to you. More chances of getting your marks. And again, I always write the counts in underneath so I know what I'm dealing with. You'll notice though on our 6th rule, we're still on number 5. Beats 2 and 3. We've read that in the previous page. Beats 2 and 3 must never be combined into one rest. So on the second line, we've got a quarter note for beat 1. That half rest for beats 2 and 3 will not do. So because they are beats 2 and 3, so I actually write an X through that particular response to let myself know that that one is not a good response. I do need to use 2 separate quarter rests for beats 2 and 3. And one way to think of it in 3/4 time, you may recall that the beat accent goes strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. That idea? So we want that beats 2 and 3 to be nice and light and weak. One final rule, this one is a good one, it's kind of fun. If there is an empty measure, and I've seen an empty measure on almost every exam I've ever seen a student do. That goes for all the theory grade levels for theories 1, 2, and 3. There's usually at least one, what I call a free mark. Hopefully you'll get a free mark. If there's an empty measure, you throw in a whole rest, no matter what the time signature. That whole rest can represent 2 beats, 3 beats, or 4 beats in any time signature. When there is a complete bar of rest in any time signature, always use one whole rest. There is no need to count beats. So I'm in 4/8 time. I like to write the counts under everything. So 8th note is beat 1. 2 16th notes is beat 2. 8th note is beat 3. 2 16th notes is beat 4. You'll notice I'm doing it on the first bar. I like to do it right off the bat. 4/8. Now I'm looking at the next bar. 1/8. 1/8 rest is beat 2. 1/8 note is beat 3, 1/8 rest is beat 4. There is my second measure counted out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's looking like that along the way there. Then I have a quarter note. That's equal to 2/8 notes. It gets a 1 and a 2. The quarter rest is equal to 2/8 notes. It gets a 3 and a 4. So you'll notice every bar adding up to 4/8 notes. So the next bar, I have a whole rest. That whole rest, we might normally say equals the equivalent of a whole note. Why would I be using that? Because the measure is empty. So that whole rest is 4/8. And it gets a 1, 2, 3, 4 all to itself. And I think we know what to do for the rest of it. We're just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last measure is the same as the third measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's where we get into the fun part of the work. On 57, 58 are our rests. Then 59, question 20 is kind of fun. I like to do the bar lines. And then on page 60, which we're going to date, we've got to get to 59. I got to keep talking a little bit through there. We're going to deal with some dotted notes, and then we're going to talk about ties on page 60. So page 60 is where we're going to date it today. And I'm going to date it today with today's date, which is November the 23rd. So you may notice that I'm just going to jump to that page 60, and I've dated it today, November the 23rd, right here. Okay, but we're going to work our way through to get ourselves over to page 60. I think we've got enough time on our video to be able to do that. So I'm jumping back to page 57. Question 19, time signatures and grouping of rests. Add proper rests under each bracket. Remember to complete each beat one at a time. So we're going to try 19A out together right now. So on 19A, what is the time signature?
4/4.
4/4 time. We've got our 4/4 time here. And in the first bar, how many beats do we have in the first bar out of 4?
3.
We have 3. So we actually have 3 beats to go. And we've got 3 beats taken care of. How many beats do we need to make it add to 4?
Quarter.
We would add a quarter rest. That's our beat 4. And so our answer for 19A first bar should look like that. 1, 2, 3, quarter rest. What about for the second bar? They've given you a quarter note. What's that beat? Beat number
2.
Actually, that's beat number 1. That quarter note in the second measure is beat number 1. So I would write a number 1 underneath there. So what would we do to make beat 2?
Add 2 quarter rests.
Hold up a second. We just want to get beat 2. We just want to get beat 2. We're not going to go that far yet. Just to beat 2.
A quarter rest.
A quarter rest. So we're going to pop in a quarter rest there. That takes care of 2 beats. Now, we are needing beats 3 and 4. Do you remember what the rule was about beats 3 and 4? Are we allowed to combine them into one rest, or should we do 2 separate quarter rests for beats 3 and 4?
Combine them.
Combine them. And so if we combine beats 3 and 4, what kind of rest equals 2 quarters? Any ideas?
Half rest.
A half rest, and it is the hat that sits on the third line. So our second measure should be 1, 2, 3, 4. And as always, I like to write my beats in. Now, let's take a look at the third measure. I see a quarter note at the beginning and a quarter note at the end. What beats of 1, 2, 3, or 4 would those be?
1 and 4.
They are 1 and 4. So I've written in a 1 and a 4 there. So I've written that in there. So what beats are we requiring to still get?
2 and 3.
Beats 2 and 3. Any specific rule about beats 2 and 3?
There was the important rule that you can't combine them, so it has to be 2 quarter rests.
It has to be 2 quarter rests. So if we were to put a half rest in there, we're not going to get our mark there. We must use 2 quarter rests there. So I go quarter, quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4, and my answer should look something like this. Hopefully we're on the same page there. All right, we have one final measure. I see a couple of quarter notes in that final measure, but I see 2 brackets on either side of the ending. So what beats would you say that those are for those quarter notes out of the 4? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
2 and 3.
Beats 2 and 3. So I'm going to write that in. A 2, 3. So I've got that taken care of right there. And then what beats do we actually need still?
Quarter rests?
We do. For beats 1 and 4, we need a quarter rest and a quarter rest. Now that actually is a really good example because I've seen on the exams, they say to make sure to write a rest under each bracket. You could have potentially said that those 2 quarter notes were beats 1 and 2 and then popped in a half rest for beats 3 and 4. But if you left that one bracket blank, you would not get your mark. So it's very important. I remember seeing on exams, make sure that you do take care of the brackets that they've given to us there. Okay, now I'd love to come back and do one of those ones again, but I want to move to question 20 on page 58. So question 20 on page 58 is a favorite question of mine. Add bar lines to each of the following examples. Underneath each, write in the counting for the main beats in the proper places. So for question 20A, what is our time signature?
4, 4.
Absolutely. Where would you put your first bar line?
Right before the next quarter note.
Absolutely. So right after the whole note, because that great big whole note is getting 4 beats right off the bat. Now things get a little more interesting. Beat 1, we could say, is the quarter note. Beat 2 is the 8th note and 8th rest. And remember, we always write the beat under the first note in any kind of grouping. I don't write the and in. I don't think it's necessary to write the and in unless you really, really want to. So I've got 1, 2 is my 8th note and 8th rest. 3 is the next pair of 8th notes, which I put the 3 under the first in the pair of 8ths. 4 goes under the next pair of 8ths, the first in the pair of 8ths. So it should look like that when we're counting the beats. I do not put the 3s and the 4s in the centers of our, in the centers in between. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, bar line. Then I've got a pair of 8th notes. Beat 1, I put the 1 under the first in the pair of 8th notes. I've got a quarter note, that's beat 2. I've got 4 16th notes, that's beat 3, and I put my 3 under the first in the 4 16th notes. You'll notice the grouping makes it easy as well, so that's our beat 3. And I've got an 8th and 2 16ths, that's my beat 4. So now I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, and it should look something like that, which means we're at the end of the line. I've got a half rest, that's beats 1 and 2, so I put a 1 and a 2. I've got my quarter note, which is beat 3, and my quarter note, that is beat 4. I've got all my bar lines taken care of, and as I say, it's a kind of a fun question to work our way through there. Now, I'm going to jump ahead because I want to make sure that we get this in here as well. Page 59, dotted notes. A dot placed immediately after a note increases its length by 1/2 of the original value. It says, important note, for now we will not use dots with rests. Simply replace a possible dot by using another rest equal to the value of the dot. So this is very important. We do not use dotted rests at Theory 1 level. They are used for specific time signatures and we will not be using them at Theory 1 level. But the way I liken a dot is equal to the next note down in the pyramid. So a dotted whole note is like a whole note plus a half note. A dotted half note is like a half note plus a quarter note. A dotted quarter note is like a quarter note plus an 1/8. And a dotted 1/8 is like an 1/8 plus a 16th. We've seen all of those patterns, well, maybe not the dotted whole note, it's not a very common one, but we've seen all the other patterns and clapping patterns for sight reading and whatnot along the way. There are some hints towards the bottom of the page on 59. When we are drawing, we want to be neat when we're drawing our dots. Dots always go to the right of the note, never to the left, never above or below. They always go to the right of the note. If it's a space note, the dot goes in the same space as the note. If it is a line note, the dot goes in the space above. We do not place it below and we don't place it on the line. It's a little too messy to deal with there. When you extend, so they mentioned that that's the first hint. It says, when you extend the value of notes by using dots, remember you have to finish each partial beat off before starting a new beat. The following examples will make this clear. Check the counting written in underneath each bar to see where the main beat falls. So if you take a look in our 3-4 example, I'm just going to look at the first example. We have beat 1 as a quarter. We have a dotted quarter, that's beat 2. We pop the 3 sort of between the dot and the 8th note. Then we have a quarter for beat 1. Beat 2, notice that the conservatory writes the 2 under the first in the pair. 3 for the quarter. A dotted quarter, 1, 2 goes in between, and 3 on the first in the pair. And finally our dotted half note, 1, 2, 3. I'll leave the other 2 for you to look through. Page 60, and then we're rounding out the theory lesson. A tie. A tie is a curved line. A tie is a curved line joining the note heads of 2 adjacent notes of the same pitch. It means that the second note is not resounded, but is held for its full value. Notes tied together are held for the combined duration of both notes. For example, 2 tied quarter notes are held for the value of 1 half note, and 2 tied half notes are held for the value of 1 whole note, and so on. And I'm just going to mention something that's rather interesting. Ties and slurs technically are the same thing. Ties connect 2 notes of the same pitch, and the only way we can connect 2 notes of the same pitch is by tying them together. Slurs connect notes of different pitches, and the only way we can do that is by playing or singing them smoothly. Something you will discover when we see tied notes as well is you'll see ties often go across bar lines. Not always, but you'll see that often happen across bar lines. Now, question 22 says, circle the individual beats in each of the following time signatures. The first one is done for you. I'm going to suggest, though, let's change it from circle, right in the counting. I'm going to write that in, right in the counting, the way we've been doing it, rather than circling the individual beats. So I'm going to jump to the second example that's in 3-4 time, and we got to go fast. Dotted half note, 1, 2, 3. Should look like this. All right, now the next measure is a little harder. We have a dotted quarter note. That is equal to 1.5 beats. So our quarter note is beat 1. Between the dot and the 8th note, I put the beat 2. So it's kind of right stuck in the center. And then beat 3 is my quarter note. So it should look something like that along the way there. And then my next measure, under the first in the pair of 8th notes, I put a 1. Under the dotted quarter note, I put a 2. And because the dotted quarter is 1.5 beats, I have to put my 3 halfway in between. And then I've got my dotted half note at the end, and I can do a 1, 2, 3. So that example should look like this. And I'll bring that over to you so you can take a peek at it. All right, we have one final thing to do, and then our lesson is through for today. Add proper rests under each bracket to complete the bar. So we're getting a little adventurous on these questions on 23A. So we have 4-4 time. Do we have a complete beat of quarter notes at the start? Don't worry about the beginning and the ending. What do we have at the beginning?
8th note.
We've got an 8th note. What could you do to finish the beat off? Because we need to finish that first beat off.
An 8th rest.
An 8th rest. So that finishes beat 1. Guess what? We do the same thing at the end, because you may recall we can build forwards and backwards. We have an 8th note, add an 8th rest right beside it. So it should look like that when we're doing it there. Now, if I'm writing my beats down, under the first 8th note is beat 1. If I go to that ending, under the 8th rest, what beat is that out of 4?
A quarter.
It is a quarter, but what beat is it? Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, or beat 4?
4.
It is beat 4. So we have our beginning and our ending. Now, what beats are left over? 2 and 3. And anything special we have to do about beats 2 and 3?
Put them as quarter rest.
Absolutely, because beats 2 and 3 may not be combined into one rest. So, again, you'll notice I've written my counting in. Here is one thing that is going to be extraordinarily helpful for you as you work through your rests. As you work through the rests, watch the examples. If you get one measure correct, the next measure might have some of the same. The next measure might have some of the same. So watch for those things along the way. We're going to wrap this up here. I see 4/16 notes. In 4/4 time, 4/16 notes equals 1 beat. So those 4/16 are beat 1. Beat 2 needs to be a quarter rest, and so does beat 3 need to be a quarter rest, because beat 4 is the next 4/16 notes. So essentially, the second measure is in many ways much like the first measure. Not exactly the same, but much like it. Now we're getting to the third measure. I see a dotted quarter note. How many beats do we have with that dotted quarter note?
1.5.
We've got 1.5. What kind of a rest could we add to make it add to 2?
8.
An 8th rest. And you'll often see dotted quarter notes are often followed by either an 8th note or an 8th rest. So that takes care of our beats 1 and 2 as we're doing our work there. I put a 1 under the dotted quarter note, and I put the 2 between the dot and the 8th rest. Then we've got a quarter note. That's good old beat 3. And we've got beat 4. And what do we put in for beat 4 for our rest?
A half rest.
I don't think we need quite a half rest, actually, because we've got 1, 2, 3, for beat 4, just a quarter rest. Because the dotted quarter is 1.5. The 8th rest is beat 2. There's a quarter note for beat 3. Quarter rest for beat 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I see the measure is empty in the last measure. What are we going to add?
A whole note.
A whole rest. It hangs under the 4th line. And I write a 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to jump to exercise C. The third measure of exercise C. Any notes in that measure? The third measure of exercise C.
No.
There aren't. What kind of rest are we going to put in?
Whole.
A whole rest, because no matter what the time signature, if there are no notes in the measure, we add a whole rest. And how many beats does that whole rest get in 3/8 time?
3.
It gets a full 3. It does. It gets 3. Even though we would think of it like a whole note and a whole rest, it gets 3 beats right there. So that is our homework, pages 56 to 60. Does it relatively make sense there? Yeah. It's our math of music. It's good for our brains. It's good brain food for us. Have an awesome week, Keenan. Have an awesome week, Lizzie, and we'll see you guys at lessons, okay? Bye-bye.
Bye, Michael.